want to welcome you all today. This is the Vote Center Study Commission of the Election Committee of Monroe County. We are here to gather input. We are not going to give a presentation, but we would really like to get your input on voting, your experiences voting, what the barriers you have to voting, and anything you would like to say about this. The idea is that eventually we would like to talk about if we want to change the way that we vote from precincts, meaning that you have one place in the whole county that you are eligible to vote, to a vote center, meaning any voter in the county can go to any of the open centers. And so it doesn't change anything fundamentally. Well, it does change things fundamentally, does it? That means you are not location-based in your voting. And that's what we're here to talk about. I'm going to introduce the committee. My name is Stacy Kowalczyk.
I'm Alex Workman.
I'm Steve Boland.
Ralph Shaw. And so we just really want to hear from you. We don't have a set agenda or any particular thing we need to hear. We just want to hear about your experiences voting, what problems you've had, and what you would like to see happen. So with that, we'll open it to the floor.
How many people here have voted at least once in Monroe County? How many? Thank you for voting.
Can I just volunteer that we've been at it since the beginning of the year. There's been a group of 11 or 12 people appointed by the county election board to study the issue. We're still studying the issue. We've been gathering input from other counties, which you can see in the brochure. While the idea is, this is proposing that we do go to vote centers, we don't have a preconception about what should happen. We're not really sure as a group what should happen. So we don't want anyone to think that we have preconceptions. That's why we're eager to get input from people. So if there's anyone who'd like to volunteer their ideas about how they vote, we'd love to hear it.
Now,
What's
how
that?
they get to the polls.
Right,
Cast a ballot.
not who they, it's all right.
There is a list of options. What we'd really be interested in hearing from you is where you really would like to vote. Close to home, close to your work, close to shopping. What does that look like for you if you had an opportunity to vote in any location or any of a number of set locations? What would be easier for you?
Rita Barrow, Van Buren Township trustee. Let me ask you this. Is this going to impose anything on the early voting, or can early voting still continue?
Yes.
Okay. So, having said that, I know there are multiple individuals that work either in town or on the east side that try to get to the voting centers before they close, and depending on traffic, they may or may not get there, and yes, even if they get there in line, they may have to wait. So, I think this is a great idea.
So were you thinking about just early voting or just on the day of the election?
Were you talking to
Yes.
me?
Yeah.
No, the day of the election, and would it take place this year?
This is, the earliest this would take effect is 2026. That's the next time there's an election. We're taking the whole year to prepare a report. And just to be clear, so you were talking about election day and not, because early voting, there is effectively one vote center now in the county. It's the old Napa building. We're talking about election day only. That's vote centers is an idea for election day.
Okay.
So is this going to replace the precincts?
If it were adopted, yeah.
So how many total precincts do we have, and then vote centers will we go to? Do we have an idea?
Well, there are 82 precincts in Monroe County, but there's not a voting center for each. There's not a precinct polling place, a polling place for each precinct. Some of them are combined into the same polling place. What is the number?
29, I think, something
29
like that.
places currently, yes.
Currently, and this would reduce them down.
Reduce them to some number that has not been determined yet.
So, yeah, so the options are, there's sort of like a floor, there would have to be at least 10 locations or so around the county. We could have as many as 29 if we wanted to just say every place that you now vote is suddenly a vote center, and you can vote there as you would have otherwise. But other people who live or choose to come to that vote center could also vote there. So you wouldn't have the problem of, you would need to still find out where is a vote center so that you could go there.
But you
once
wouldn't be
got
sent
there-
away because you're in the wrong
Right.
precinct.
That's right.
Right, which is the current situation.
Yeah, one benefit. Of the 64 counties that are using this at the present moment, what kind of increase in voter turnout was seen based on what their previous history was? Because, the number, like in Monroe County, as I just told, 91,000 registered voters, but does this seem to where it would be able to increase the total number of people that actually come out to vote?
What we've seen, and what they just did a report, Kylie provided us, from the Ball State analysis that said, on the whole, it doesn't really change voter turnout, that voter turnout is much more driven by what's on the ballot than on how easy it is to get to a polling location.
Okay. Thank you.
There was a report from college-infused counties that did say that their turnout did go up somewhat with students, but only during general elections.
So basically, looking at it from that standpoint of vote centers, it may not increase, it won't increase through the current reports, the voting turnout, but it would be convenient for those individuals that are choosing to vote.
And it might eliminate some problems that people have of showing up at the wrong place or getting redirected, and so it could be beneficial. It could be beneficial.
What's the number, the percentage of people are turned away because of being in the wrong polling location?
I'm not sure we have a percentage, but we know last time we had 125, you said, calls.
Yeah, so after the primary election, I had when I finished counting, I had 125 calls after the primary election complaining that they were not able to vote at whichever location they went to. We've also had a number of people that have moved to Monroe County from Vote Center County that is confused and doesn't understand the process that we have here versus other counties in Indiana. And then also a lot of students, they have issues with that they live on campus, but their polling site might not be on campus. For instance, there's a student that came to us, the Vote Center Committee, and told us that they live on campus, but their polling site is Bloomington North High School.
Yeah.
So,
Which, it took them an hour by bus.
yes.
Well, I could share my experiences. It's kind of boring, but lived on the northwest side since 1979. So I always went to my precinct, which was most of the time at Tri-North. And I do have fond memories of that because of the personal, you see the same precinct workers and stuff like that. Towards before COVID, I noticed that it was really quiet over there, and I think the workers were like reading books when you'd show up, and I was like, could be like the only voter. So there was that. So anyways, when COVID came along, I started voting early at the voting center that we have, and I just loved it. I loved it, and I find the workers there are, people that I recognize and high five when I go to vote. And the only thing that, and it does, you know, like, there is something cool about going to a precinct and having people like write your name and open up that big book. I'm old, I love that kind of stuff. But I was kind of wondering if you did this and go to a countywide voting place, if the technology would have to change, you know? So is it gonna be all technology, you're just gonna go to a computer or something? Because, you know, you could show up at any voting precinct and they won't have the big book.
I don't think there's no way you can do it without
Yeah.
computers.
Yeah, and
You
we
have to
don't
print
use
a
the big
ballot.
books now either.
Yeah, we don't have the books anymore. It's an electronic poll book, so all of it is on an iPad now.
So it's just like what your experience has been at the election operations for early voting. That's exactly the experience you would have. You would walk in, computer would check and make sure you are who you say you are and that you haven't already voted. And then you would get a ballot printed exactly for who's supposed to be on your races based on where you live in your precinct. There would not be pre-printed ballots. It would be printed on demand, as they say. And then you would mark your ballot, still be the same paper ballot, mark it, the clear dark mark staying inside the box, and then put it into the scanner, and then you have voted. And you get a sticker, same as before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know I'm kind of waxing nostalgic for the old days, but what I really mean to say is that anything that makes it easier for people to vote, do it. You know, because I really realized when the early voting option came up, how it's really saved me a couple of times when I'm going to be out of town voting day, vote, and every vote counted.
I'd like to ask a question of people who are here. I mean, it's still, the figure is roughly 60% of voters vote on election day. So you're one of the 4% who sometimes takes advantage of early voting. So for those of you who vote on election day, one idea is that a precinct was designed to be small enough that you could navigate it on foot. You could, in theory, walk down to your polling place. But, you know, we don't really do that anymore. We only have 29 polling places now instead of 82. So one idea is that we can do this to save money. The other idea is we can keep the 29 places to be more convenient to people. So, like, should our priority here be cost or convenience? Like, does anybody have a thought about whether you'd rather have 10 voting centers, but you can go to any of them, or 30 precinct locations, but you have to go to a particular one? What sounds better to people? That's one balance we're trying to strike. Any thoughts?
I'd rather break it up like we have been, because I have stood in that line down off of Rogers by Blooming Foods. That line was forever long. And I don't want to get into those giant lines again, because we are busy and we just want to run in and vote.
So you're saying that you'd rather just know that you could go to any vote center, whichever one seemed less busy, and just vote there? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Instead of just having everybody go to one area. Did I get that right?
Well, I mean, in other words, if you knew there were 10 voting areas, you can go to any of them. Or there were 30 of them, but you have to go to a particular one.
Oh,
Which one would you prefer?
probably the 10.
Because then you could go anywhere.
Just so using that scenario of 30, does that mean you still have to be in that voting center block, or could anybody go into any of the 30?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like right now we have about 30,
Right.
but you have to go to a particular one.
Yes.
Would there be a possibility of utilizing the 30 so anybody can go to any of them?
It is, but is it going to save us any money?
Well, the primary thing from a fiscal standpoint is to get people out to vote.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, that's the balances, all the balances you're trying to match here.
Yeah.
I had two questions just that were of curiosity to me. I'm admittedly rather undereducated on this issue, but the first one was Would this impact the number of precinct committeemen we have? Would that switch our system with that, or would we keep that?
No, the precincts are drawn decennially.
All right,
This is just a matter of how we use the precincts in voting.
all right, and as someone who's been to some of the more, I don't know what the best word would be, but basically the regions in Monroe County outside of Bloomington, further reaches, or however you want to word that, would this possibly disincentivize people that are further away from the city is more just what I'm trying to say.
That's a good question. I mean, so one thing I've heard about is the word Burgoon. Like I keep hearing Burgoon. This is a remote voting location that we don't know how we could give it up. It's out by Lake Monroe, is it? Is that
Yeah.
But it has very, very low turnout. You know, that's kind of what we're here to ask you all is, you know, should we keep a location like that, or should we make them drive to another location?
I'm out in the northeast, west part of the county, and whether I drive 10 minutes to the Steinsville or 15 minutes to Ellettsville isn't that big a deal from my perspective.
I wonder if you shouldn't just kind of think about seniors and disabled people and people that are used to just being in their neighborhood. We're assuming the precinct is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood, what they would prefer, because, like, you know, transportation is no problem for me right now, but, you know, I wonder on down the line if it would be, you know, having one far away would impact people that can't get around.
For people who are infirm, there's the travel board that people can apply to have the voting come to them.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, I mean, that's always been the case.
I used it when I had COVID.
Yeah.
It was election day, and she put it into effect.
So for the people who are the most immobile, has been an existing solution. This is, I think, for people who are mobile, but it's a matter of, you know, again, convenience is a question, cost is a question. You know, we don't know what people would want.
One of the things you're hoping to resolve is you're already having a hard time getting enough poll workers. So if you only have 10, 20 sites, 15 sites, whatever, you're going to be better off with poll workers, maybe.
I just wondered how much money do we save per place?
Most of those counties that have vote centers said that they have saved money because they haven't had to have as many staff. But on the other hand, if you have, you know, just a dozen or 15 locations around the county, you need more people in each location. You know, you can't just have the 3 people who are, well, however many, were working at one of these vote centers. You know, on a busy election day, you're going to need a lot of people to handle all the voters.
And aren't you going to need a larger space than some of the polling spaces?
Probably.
We want to encourage the clerk's office to jump in whenever they hear a question. They
Yeah,
can
so
answer.
on that, we have to go to a certain location that can hold a vote center. There is a state statute that we have to go by to select a polling location for a vote center. So even with the sites that we have now, we still have to go through a whole list from the ADA that is telling us the guidelines that we have to follow in order for them to be a location. But then also, with the amount, we have to have a certain amount by state law as well in order to cover the entire county. So it would just, eventually it would be, I know that the vote center committee has talked about starting with the 30, seeing after a couple of election cycles how many of those are being used the most, and then condensing down to make it to where we want it in the long run.
I think the fairest thing to say, as far as my priorities, is access to the polls. And I think 125 is a very conservative number because we are working at Election Central on Election Day unless we are called out to the election board can be called out in bipartisan fashion to address an issue at a polling site. But people are also coming in person because we still have people who think that the
last time they voted early was at Election Central. They mistakenly presumed that Election Central is a voting place on election day. So she's talking about the number of people who call, but we also have people who come in person and then we have to turn them away. And unfortunately, so many people come in between that 5 and 6 hour when it's that lag. They don't know if they're gonna make it back to their polling site in time, if they have to go pick the kids up from daycare or drop something off to an elderly parent or something. We are not taking any other form of voting away. We are making it easier for any voter. We want everybody who is eligible, properly registered to vote. We want everybody to vote at the most convenient location for them if they haven't been able to take advantage of early voting or those last 2 Saturdays. And so for me, money is not, I don't want to pretend like money is not an object because it is. But the point is I want everybody who wants to vote to be able to vote because that's what democracy looks like.
Just acknowledge Monroe County Clerk Nicole Brown answering the question just now, and her deputy, Kylie Moreland, who's the election supervisor for the county. So we're going to direct some questions to them.
Okay. And we found when Ralph actually did this work, and asked other counties about their experiences, that they started with more and consolidated over time because they found that most people congregated, in the busier parts of the county. And so I think that that's an option for us as well.
My personal opinion as an inspector for the Ellisville Christian Church is that on-demand printing would be ideal. We have very short dwell times for voters coming through, and we have had to turn people away. So if we were able to print their ballot, they would be able to take advantage of it.
That is one thing that I have talked with other counties about. They said that they see a cost reduction in ballots because they're not having too many ballots of one precinct or one style. Then they're able to print as the voters are coming in instead of wasting money on ballots that don't get used.
You mean all those we gave back?
Yeah, that, and then also with the surveys that came back in from our poll workers this year, we did see a significant amount recommending vote centers as well. So we have poll workers that are also recommending them, as well as voters who are calling and recommending them.
So one of the questions that we have is, like, if this was just you and you were voting on election day, is it easy for you to vote where you currently vote? Would you like to be able to vote close to where you work? We had a very moving letter from a woman who had 2 jobs, and she had tried to get to vote on the noon hour, and then she couldn't get to there because she had to be at her 2 jobs. So trying to put yourself in your mind of yourself on election day, or people that you know maybe who don't have as much flexibility, where do you think would be ideal kinds of locations to have vote centers?
Should they have not gotten a provisional ballot?
There are lots of things that should have happened. In fact, she did get a provisional ballot, but you see, because she was at the polling site that wasn't her polling site, and the provisional ballot didn't count because it was not her correct precinct. So, that's why it was difficult.
They still get to feel like they voted.
But that.
You can just give everyone I voted stickers and they can feel like they voted that way.
There you go.
I put a mark in the box.
Some people want to think they're making it.
Oh, I missed.
What about those people out there in Burgoon? So like, where are they gonna vote if you close that one down? Would they have to, like, rural people? Do they have to, like?
The nearest polling site's Burgoon. I have driven down there. It is quite the drive. The nearest one is 15 minutes away. It would be the Eastview Church of the Nazarene. So it's a 15-minute drive by car from Burgoon to the Eastview Church of the Nazarene.
So rural people, are there any rural,
So Burgoon is our lowest turnout location. This primary election, we only had 4 voters from there. So for them, it would be a 15-minute drive. The next smallest, I would say, is Harrodsburg, but
Sit there for 12 hours for 4 votes.
yeah.
We want people to vote.
Yep.
Question back there?
Yeah, so as I know Bergen sort of is the model for, you know, worrying about a very unique location. And I know it's probably dangerous to maybe try to find the 10 voters there and maybe, you know, survey them a little bit. But it strikes me that people that are driving home to Bergen are probably driving past Nazarene on the way home because there's not a lot of in and out. Or perhaps it might be useful to ask in the survey where they buy their groceries, given that I presume 100% of them buy their groceries, but maybe 50% of them don't. But I guess the question is for these really hard to reach polling locations, is there some thought that doing some survey in those precincts to figure out some of their habits and where a better polling location may be for them? Is that been explored?
I know that we had talked as a vote center committee to create a survey that will send out to county registered voters eventually, but they're trying to get more information before we send those out so that we can gear towards what questions we want to ask them.
Would it, but
Part of the-
she's had her hand up for a while.
I think, and this is just me personally, number one, is each township should have at least one polling place where the individuals that are there can go to. And number two, she was talking about electronic, if we're doing the local government, okay, and I go into wherever, Steinville or whatever, and I have to vote there, are they gonna be able to print out the individuals that's going to be on the ballot?
Any vote center will be able to print for any precinct in the county.
That's what I was.
So currently, we are completely electronic. All of our, so we have the electronic poll book that has all of the voters in it. That's how they check in. And then our scanners are electronic. So everything that we are doing currently is electronic. It would just transition from by precinct to anybody can vote there, and they would get their ballot printed there.
Okay, but I still believe that there should be at least one polling place in each township. There's what, 11? So.
There's 11 townships. That's a question for,
Other counties that I've spoke to, that's how they do it. They have one per township.
do we
and
have
then
that
there's-
now? Do
Yeah.
we have that now?
Yeah.
Because each township has at least one polling place.
Yep.
And I would take the highest count that's in the township, use those.
Rita, you're a township trustee, aren't you? Do you feel that one voting center is enough for a township?
No, because I've seen it with the two schools that we have. Yes. They were backed up.
Okay, so Van Buren is a pretty populous township, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
but Indian Creek maybe doesn't need to,
exactly.
even though it might be a big distance to
Yes,
travel.
they're all about 36 square miles, so, you know, but again, if you look at people that are working in town, they could go to one there.
So that was kind of my question when I said, would you like to vote close to where you work? But, I mean, if you don't work, then that's a silly question, but would you like to vote close to where you shop or close to where your family members live? Or, you know, what are the kinds of things that would go through your mind and say, oh, well, I could just stop off on the way and vote? What would be the thing that you might be on your way to or from that we haven't thought of? that we
Doctor's
should-
offices, hospitals, anything, honestly.
Would you vote immediately before or after shopping for groceries? Would you vote
not.
immediately before or after you pick up your kid from school? Would you vote before or after you, you know, are on your way to work? That's what we're asking.
For me, I love going across the street up here to the Catholic Church to vote. It's very convenient. And I think a lot of people just want to do that. Even on their way home from work, they occupy that place. And I agree with Nicole that, you know, we need to have plenty open for everybody to conveniently vote on their way home or, you know, on their way to work.
Okay, so your priority is that the polling center be close to home?
Yes, that would be me, but for people that can only do it at lunch, you know.
Well, we care about each person, so what are we getting? I mean, okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I just had two things. I guess one, I agree. I do actually prefer it close to home, even if I work on that day or not. So just from personal experience, not that that means too much. I have a similar experience to hers. Second, just you guys may know this already, but it might be a good idea when the polling happens this year to take notes of when the ballots come in if you want to determine when it would be a good idea for, well, just going back to the question of when do people want to vote, like after work, or might be a good idea to just take note of when the most times come in. We could get some hard numbers that way. It might be easier than asking.
They might already have that. I think they have a record
Makes sense.
of when.
Do we have date stamps in regards to time frames where we've got, you know, the maximum amount of people coming in to vote? So it makes a determination.
Does the clerk's office know when the ballots come in?
So for the most part, whenever we look on our dashboard as the votes are coming in during the day, it's not as the votes are coming in, it's as people check in that we see. But for the most part, it's normally around noon, and 1 o'clock is our highest peak time. And then about 6 o'clock is our second highest peak time.
Any other thoughts about where you prefer to
So
vote?
I work at home, I work for IU, I don't have to go anywhere. So the best thing for me to do is vote whenever it's convenient. So having another general vote center in addition to the one that's in Bloomington might be more useful for me.
So are you saying more early voting locations?
Yeah, like, you know, a couple more, I don't know.
Maybe 1 or 2?
Yeah. Or maybe some limit, you know, time frame when there would be more, maybe not all the time, but.
Yeah, that actually was, when we looked at what other counties do, some of them do that. They have like one center that's open for the whole month, the 4 weeks before election day. But then that last week before election day, they open a couple of others in other locations.
That's very good.
So can't we just open it up that you could just go to any one of them?
This is the idea. That's the idea we're exploring. And so you would like one convenient to you,
Yeah.
but if you knew that there were places that you could go to any polling center, even the ones that aren't close to you, how would that make you feel? Would you be more likely to vote
Yes.
at the place closest to home, or just wherever?
Wherever I can for lunch.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Any other volunteers
Same
care to
thing.
share how they would?
How would that early voting centers, you'd literally have our election central that would be early voting center and then take the most populous areas and.
So right now, what we have is we have the one location for early voting. When we talk to other counties, their module is they have the one that they have open the whole early voting month. And then that last week before early voting, before election day, they open up 2 or 3 more locations that are already gonna be vote centers on election day. And they just open them up where they think are the most populated. So for instance, I know Purdue for Tippecanoe County, they have their one that is for their early voting location, and then they open up one on campus, and then they open up 2 others within the county.
And I, just in full disclosure, I am not talking about the current members of the election board, but in a previous incarnation of the election board, because the commissioners had given feedback that they wanted early voting opportunities in the more rural parts of Monroe County, I did propose that we kind of do a roving early voting site. So on the northwest side 1 week, the southwest side the next, southeast side, northeast side. That particular incarnation of the election board was not supportive of that. And in my mind, I envisioned the same crew just going to each site, and it would just change each week, and they were not supportive of that at the time. Allen County is also a county that has early voting in different parts of the county. And so I was kind of taking from that clerk's model. And it just, there was no buy-in at that time. If it's changed, I'd be happy to revisit that.
My feeling of that is, it's kind of like the large item drop-off days that you never know which
Yeah.
site has.
Yeah. You know,
So-
and the communication about stuff like this, like I'm getting confused already, and when it, you know, you don't want anybody to not go to the right center because, you know, what do you do?
I mean, that's the whole point, is you wouldn't have to go to the right center, right? You would go to any center.
Yeah, I
and
know,
vote.
but just to communicate the system.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true.
People
Yeah.
is kind of, maybe a challenge at these times of local journalism.
I'd like to ask another question then. So, how far are any of you willing to go to cast your vote? How many minutes of drive time? Or are you only interested in voting where you can walk to? Like, how far are you willing to go to cast your vote? Because that's going to determine the number of centers that we settle on. Should we stay at 29? Can we reduce it? We've heard what some other counties have done, but maybe we can ask you all, how far are you willing to go to vote? I'm sure there's an upper limit.
One of the things that you need to consider is the age of the people who you are talking to. So how it would work for a person with 2 little kids is completely different than how it would work for somebody who is 80. And so, you know, different priorities. I wondered if you have, could you tell us if you have had other meetings here in Monroe County on this topic?
So we have meetings the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, and we started in December of 2023. This is the first time that we've gone out into the community. We plan to have a couple more meetings throughout Monroe County. We're going to have one in Unionville, and also on the west side of Bloomington we will have one. And then we plan to have one on campus once the students come back. But besides from that, we did have a group of college students come in that were part of the PACE group and other groups, and they put in their input for their, like their age group, and then we decided to start coming out to make it more convenient for different age groups and different people who have jobs that can come out at 6 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock when our normal meetings are.
Did we answer her question though?
Yeah, I think you did, I mean, pretty much. But the other thing that I was wondering about was, how did our other counties decide?
So they all did the same thing that we are doing. They created a committee, and then they work as a committee. They take the proposal to the election board. The election board votes on it, and then it gets sent to the state. And then for your question about somebody that's young that has children and they need to go vote, I live in a vote center county, and when I voted with my 2 children, I had to drive almost 30 minutes to my closest vote center.
Did you find that acceptable?
Yeah, I found it acceptable because, so I live in Greene County. It's a very large county. The part I live in is more rural, so me driving to Bloomfield was about a 30-minute drive for me from my house, because I live closer to Monroe County. So for me, it's acceptable in my opinion. Even with my children, most of the time I take somebody with me just to go in. I'm like, okay, you stay here, I'll run inside. I'll be back.
Yeah, I think for the distance, time, getting way out that ways and driving into Ellisville would not be a problem. Driving into Bloomington is more of a hassle. It's trying to park, trying to make sure you're not running over protesters.
So we
So
might say that she's 30 minutes and maybe you're 15 minutes.
So
and maybe
with
you're
that,
5
on
minutes.
the parking part, we have to make sure there is plenty of parking at the locations, and there also has to be free parking. So like currently we have IMU, and a lot of people complain that they don't have enough parking there and that it's just a very hard location to get into. We've been looking at trying a different location on IU's campus area, and now that we have more connections with IU, I think we'll be able to do that if we do transition over to a vote center. It would just be a lot easier if we're able to get locations that have great parking.
And your
turnout for
IMU, it was less than Burgoon for this primary
But it was the
election.
primary,
Yeah.
graduation had already happened.
Students were already gone.
And just to dovetail what Ms. Kylie said, there's some very wonderful people at the IMU who have worked with us in the past, and when we expressed concern about parking, they were willing to put signs like, so that you could park on the drive on election day. Certainly, you know, our people with, our voters who have mobility issues, most of the time it's students who could come in and take advantage of that, but they were willing to create parking, and in fact, they offered to put food trucks trying to entice voters. At the time that IMU was selected, both the college Democrats and the college Republicans came and spoke to that incarnation of the election board about having a centralized location. We used to have, some of you may remember, a polling site at Assembly Hall. That's where I voted when I was in my very first apartment. We also had one, it used to be called Ashton. I don't know what the name of it is now. I would recognize it on the list of polling
The
sites.
Union Street dorms, yeah.
Reed Dormitory has been a polling site on the IU campus. This was a more centralized location, and that was how it was selected. And so they will work with us.
Yeah.
On
And I think the union also can validate parking tickets.
Yeah,
so
so
that,
for the primary election, if you had your sticker, you just showed it, and then they would let you out. You didn't have to pay anything.
so that should eliminate the free parking question there.
I forgot.
It'll come back to you.
I think you have kind of two audiences. You talked about walking, but that's really going to just be the core Bloomington area. Those of us out here, we don't walk anywhere or even bike anywhere because it's just not convenient, particularly in the winter.
So currently for Ellettsville, there are 3 precinct locations to vote. So there's Ellettsville Christian Church, St. John's, and
Steinsville, isn't
what was that?
it? Steinsville?
Yeah, Steinsville and Bryantville.
Does that count as an Ellettsville precinct? Okay.
RVB, Richmond Van Blossom.
I remember. I would think that the more significant impact would be dwell time in line at the polling location versus how far I have to drive. I remember at St. John's having to stand in a line that looped all the way around and back in and out again before we could get a vote, and that makes a difference.
So for you, it's the total time that it takes to get the vote and get back to where what you were doing, rather than just the travel time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
I like that idea. We could have one of those maps that shows you all the voting center, like voting center locations and wait times at each one. And then you could pick which one was most convenient for the priority city.
It's important, I think, not to, to make a plan to vote
Yeah.
that does not include waiting until election day to make your plan. And we do encourage you to check your voter registration early to make sure that you're registered to vote. On indianavoters.com, it tells you currently in precinct format where you go to vote on election day. It tells you who's going to be on your ballot. I think that, at least in part, the issue is those who unfortunately wait until election day to make their vote plain, and we are even wanting to accommodate those people.
There were quite a few people that came through that had either no access to the internet or were unable to figure out how to navigate to find that information.
And our phone number doesn't change. It's the same phone number as long as I've been.
But they don't see that. You know, even, you know, having the map on the poll book was good. But people, you know, didn't have the ability or wherewithal to discern that information.
And again, nothing's going to change in terms of your ability to vote early, your ability to vote those last 2 Saturdays prior to the election, or travel forward if you have mobility issues. None of that is going to change. We are trying to enlarge the tent, and vote centers allow us to enlarge the tent.
Absolutely.
We have just under 100,000 voters here in Monroe County. I would love to have the problem. We have to prepare as though they're all going to turn out. As you know,
It would have been nice.
turnout,
Busy.
it doesn't always work that way. But I would love to have that problem where
You and me both.
all of Monroe County voters are in some form, whether it's election day, early voting, vote by mail, travel board, overseas, military. I'd love to have that problem, to have to count all those votes.
Make it on TV more.
I'm good, thanks.
I'd love to ask, I'd love to ask the clerk's office, is there a way to indicate the number of people in line real time? Like a garage might say how many spaces are open. Is that possible?
So I'm certainly looking that when those of you get the email on election day, I'm certainly looking at our busiest polling sites and our least busy polling sites. And I'm happy to tell, we've got a few media people in the room, I'm happy to say this is how many people have voted since the polls opened. You know, again, so that you can make a plan during the day.
But I mean, is that a good indication of how long the line is right now, which
Yeah.
discourages people who have to wait an hour to vote?
So the process of checking in, getting your ballot, printing your ballot, casting your vote, and putting it through the ballot box or the scanner on election day, when we did the time track of it, it was just under a minute to get your ballot, check in, and then go vote. And then if you know what you're doing when you walk in there, know exactly how you're voting, it only takes that minute to finish the process.
So it wouldn't be worth doing because
No.
it just takes so little time.
Yeah.
We haven't had an hour-long wait since the worst of the pandemic.
One question that I would.
And that was because of the social distancing. I apologize.
Got it.
You're fine.
It was because of the social distancing. And if you remember at the time, the governor had a mandate that only a certain number of people could congregate in that place at that time. And, you know, we didn't try to bend the rules or anything, but sometimes the lines ebb and flow. And we did have people calling and saying, they have more than 15 people in here right now, you know. And so we had to even monitor that.
Early voting had a larger turnout that year as well, so that would be one of the reasons that line would have been longer.
So, thank you guys. One question I have for everyone is, if we did transition to voting centers, how would you all like to be informed that that transition happened? Would you just like to contact like your trustees office, township? You know,
I think a suggestion of how we would prefer to do it is, so right now when we change a polling location, we send out a postcard to those people saying that your precinct has changed polling locations. And that's how we do it currently. So if we were to go to vote centers, what we would prefer to do is send out a bright yellow, orange, some type of postcard that says we have transitioned to vote centers. These are the vote centers. You can choose any of these. You can vote at any of these.
And I think that's great. I do.
Madam Clerk?
I've lost my train of thought.
Well,
I know what I was gonna say, sorry, just took me a minute. We are incredibly fortunate to have some amazing partners in the community, like the League of Women Voters, the party chairs, the candidates themselves, PACE. We have a remarkable number of people in the community who help us get the word out. I mean, yes, I am sure I could probably find the resources to have we have transitioned to vote centers commercial. But I hate to have my picture taken, so that's not my person. But we have a number of partners who would help us. I have no doubt that we have the resources and the ability together with our partners to make sure that everyone knows that we have transitioned to a vote center county. And I look forward to making that announcement.
I would say putting it on Nextdoor and Facebook and all the other good
That's why Kylie's here.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of creating social media for the elections office. So there'll be a Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram, and anything that you can think of. We're going to create some type of platform on each of those so that we can start getting more information out, because we have such a younger, diverse group that's starting to come into the voting scene who that's what they live by. They use social media. That's how they get their news. Like me, for instance, when I found out about Biden, I had no clue until I got on Facebook. That's how I found out, because we don't watch the news at our house. We don't have cable. So.
The other way that I thought might be helpful to let people know about Change to Vote Center would be if you could inform the voters at the election prior to the vote center change. So
great idea.
Well, the issue there is that 2025 is an off year for elections. There will be no elections in the county. So November 2024 will be the last election before May 2026.
well, that makes it difficult.
It will be not possible to do that.
Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons that we're
Right.
starting on this now, so that we have 25 to go through the process of the change and getting the equipment and learning the new equipment and just getting trained up on everything, so that when we open up in 26, that first election, we're good to go. We're smooth flowing. We know what we're doing.
If you could have something at this coming election that says, we are planning to make a change, go to here.
It's just not up to us, though.
Yeah.
We're just a committee, and we're not the election board.
And
Now, if you're underground, you're not gonna know.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to access, you gotta be able to access news and information. If you are hunkered down in your basement, I am so sorry.
I'm well connected.
You know, this year we sent out a huge postcard giving you the 3 options to vote. I got mine twice because I have a PO box. I had somebody yelling on election day that she had no idea about the 3 options to vote. I don't know where to go from. I pull money out of my budget and send to a mailer to every.
We send it to every residential address in the county, not just voters.
If you could maybe improve the website a little bit, that would make it go.
We were paying to have somebody oversee our website. We were convinced to get rid of that. I think
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. I think it's probably harder to get it back unless you know some amazing person who would offer their services pro bono that's their service to elections. I'd be honored to do that.
I think that's one of the problems with most websites is that.
I think you might be right there.
That, and then with the website, we did create a new map. I worked with GIS to create a new map that all you do is you click on it and then you type in your address. It pops up where your precinct is. It shows your polling location, how you can vote, and then also gives you all of the information on who's going to be on your ballot.
Which is also on indianavoters.com.
Yeah,
That's free
that kind of
every
thing,
single day.
just a link on the
Yep.
county web.
Yeah, we have a link to that one as well on there.
That's good.
I know, I'm sorry. Do we have a lot of students that vote? In November?
In the general, everybody wants to vote for the president. Sadly, what happens with the university is many students don't realize they need to change their voter registration from their home community somewhere else to Monroe. I've gone out to the university myself. I've sent my staff when there are voter registration drives. And then unfortunately, I've had somebody come in from St. Joseph County, which for those of you who don't know is South Bend.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to vote. Well, that's a minimum, if traffic is good, a minimum of a 4-hour drive. So if you ask me at 2 about your ability to vote for the president, that's why you gotta make that vote plan before election day, because we could have told you.
So during the general, we'll have quite a few provisional ballots that come from that location because we have faculty that works at IU and we have students that will try to vote there and don't realize that they can't because it's not a vote center. And so then they just give up, or sometimes they'll like try to make it to their location, but they'll get there after 6 and you have to be in line by 6 in order to vote. But then we also still have the rebuttal of, we have early voting and we have vote by mail and all of these other options that they can take advantage of.
So in order for a student to be able to vote, and say they're from Jersey, and they want to vote in Indiana, they have to change their residence.
Yes, they would have to change their registration to
Because
here.
they should be an Indiana resident to
Correct.
vote in Indiana.
Just
Yep.
keep in mind, though, that students have choices. They can either vote where they go to college or where they came from,
Yep.
just not both. But some students choose to vote back home because they care about a local race there, and that's state law, that's their choice.
But in a presidential year, everybody wants to vote for the top of the ticket, and so it's unfortunate when we have to, the election board is not able to count that provisional ballot once it's proven that they're not registered in Monroe County.
But one thing I would like to add is that there's many,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
one thing I would like to add is, as, there's many drives that are being conducted around the county, even on the campus, that are to register more students to vote, especially in Monroe County. IU Dems, Republican Club, I can't speak today. But like as we've stated before, just depends where the student wants to vote and like if they care about a race back home. So there is a likeliness of a potential increase depending on like the election year. So.
Any final thoughts?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming and engaging with us. I think it was really, in some ways reassuring and in other ways enlightening, and sometimes both. But I really appreciate, because this is the first time we've gone out to the community to hear from people who are voters and to hear what you think of what's confusing. And guess what? This isn't the last time you can let us know. So if anything comes up, you can get in touch with us through election supervisor Kylie Moreland, or there's a form there if you want to send us your thoughts on anything else.
So if anyone would like to fill this out and leave it for us, we'd be happy to take it. Not required, if you'd like to.
Appreciate you guys coming out.
Good job.
Thank you all for coming.